Hi, welcome to our ATD Tech SIG podcast, first ever. I'm Cassie, your co-host, along with Jerome.
How's it, everyone?
And today we are very fortunate. We have a Sherpa. I don't even know what that means, but we have a Sherpa with us today. So Ian Kitajima from Oceanit is going to be sharing about what he does and who he is. And we're very curious about who he is, what he does. And he's in the business of curiosity. So I'm going to turn it over to Ian. And my first question too is, who you, brah?
Thanks. Really feel honored to be kicking off your podcast series. So thanks for the invitation. What can I tell you? I'm a local boy. Grew up here in Hawaii. My parents. My grandfather was a Buddhist minister of all things. He was a Buddhist minister. He came to Hawaii in the early 1900s to the Big Island. And was a Buddhist minister there. And so my father's side of the family all grew up on that side in Kohala on the Big Island. My mother grew up in Pauilo, and they both eventually came to Oahu and kind of met. And I grew up in Kaneohe on the windward side of the island, and was very fortunate to have that experience. And then going to school, at Kaneohe Elementary and King Intermediate and Castle High School. So I'm public school all the way, including Windward Community College for a couple of years. And then I transferred to University of Hawaii, where I majored in business, went to the business school. Before it was called Schuyler. It was called the College of Business and of Administration, CBA. And then eventually left Hawaii as soon as I could. I was always a kid running away from home. And so, and it was part of it was to explore the world. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to, I always thought, how do I test myself? And the best way is to kind of go out into the scary world. But I've always been on journeys, I think. And so,
You're like the guy who's like on the bus asking for a transfer every time. Is that what I hear?
Yeah, actually you bring up I've never told a couple of these stories ever. But I used to, so we used to live on the windward side of the island, right across from Hawaii Memorial Cemetery, and right on Cam Highway. So right on Cam Highway, and there was a bus stop. I have to walk kind of along, and back then there wasn't sidewalks. It was pretty dangerous. And unfortunately, my mother was ill up and down during my childhood. And so at some level, she couldn't control me, right? Because she was not feeling well or whatever. And so, but I would always love to explore. So I would get on the bus by myself, walk on the highway, get to the bus stop. And I want to say I was only probably about 7 years old. And I would catch the bus to Ala Moana Shopping Center by myself from the windward side now. And that was quite a journey.
Wow.
To go to Ala Moana Shopping Center. I'd spend the day just exploring and then get back on the bus and come back home. Now, several times I catch the wrong bus. And this one is the Circle Island one. So it has to go all the way around the island, North Shore, come back down, blah, 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 and then eventually get to Kaneohe. But I was always exploring. And eventually I remember taking one of my friends with me, which totally freaked him out because he was probably only 7 or 8 years old too. I was like, what are we doing? Go, yeah, we're going to take the bus, right? But my whole life has been like that. I think I've lived and worked in many different places and lived on the mainland, lived in, Finland, which is really as far as you can get away from Hawaii. But it's always, I think I was really fortunate. Unfortunately, because my mother was ill, it allowed me the opportunity to explore when, luckily I never got hurt or got abducted or something. But because I didn't have that supervision, I guess, because she was ill, I was able to explore. And so I guess what happened is I didn't have the fear that other kids had. Right? It's like, no, you cannot walk to the bus stop. It's too dangerous because it's right on the free highway, right? You could get hit, right? Now I was careful. Luckily, I didn't get hit, right? But I never grew up with that fear. And this is at least that part of exploring and going out. So that's why I would, it's like, I'm going to move to the mainland, after college. I'm like, I'm moving away, right? Living there. I come back. Okay, I'm going to go back again, a few years later, I move back, right? Or travel or work in places, all over. I worked all over in Japan and different places, and was never fearful of that, as well as fearful of people or different people. My father was in the restaurant supply business, so all of his customers and clients, they were all all different kinds of people. Caucasians, all kinds of different people, Italians, all these. So I grew up around these people, whereas I wasn't, even though we lived in Kaneohe, it was like, this is normal, right? You have all these Caucasian people and Italians and Jewish people and blah, blah, So I never was like, oh, like, who's that, right? It's like the first Caucasian person, It's like, I was always around that. So I guess there was always that in my life. And that really, I don't know, it just increased curiosity, but also there wasn't the fear of things.
That's so interesting. So you say like that wasn't the fear, and it's I know what you do, but you work at Oceanit. Can you tell us a little bit more about, okay, what do you do?
Yeah, so you can think of like Oceanit. I always tell people it's kind of like if you watch James Bond and you got, you have that guy Q, right? And Q has a lab of engineers and scientists inventing things. That's kind of what we do at Oceanit.
Well, like Kingsman too, right? Like
yeah,
that
like Kingsman.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So we try and, so there's a lot of, it's a very creative place, driven by, science and technology. If I look at the core of people, they're very creative. And everybody brings a different kind of skill set or experience. And, I tell my boss sometimes, it's kind of like a jazz session, right? We're a jazz company. We're not like an orchestra where you just play the same music all the time. It's more
improv,
like a
jazz.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as a result of that, we invent a lot of different things. I'm one of the few technical persons, but my whole career has been in technology. So I've created, founded, helped run technology companies, but I'm primarily on the business side. But I have a deep curiosity about technology and such, and so I try and translate the world of what our scientists and engineers are trying to do to people in the rest of the world, the rest of us normal people.
Layman's term.
Yeah. And at the same time, I try and understand what customers are trying to do, when many times they don't know exactly what they're trying to do. And even when they tell me, Ian, we want this particular solution, many times I have to kind of dig past that, right? See past and go, well, why do you want that solution? To really understand what is the real need behind it. And so part of it is, that's where I'm kind of like a translator, right? Translating what the customer is trying to say, or what they're really trying to say, even though they're throwing up to me, oh, I want X, Y, and Z, but in reality, the reason why they want X, Y, and Z is because of A, B, and C, or something else, right? And at the same time, I'm looking at what our technologists are inventing, and I'm trying to understand what they're trying to do, and beyond the thing they're working on. So they invent a widget, but the real value of that widget may not even be the initial application of that widget, and it may not even be the widget. It may be the skill or the experience they had as a result of inventing the widget that may be the bigger thing that they built.
Like you're a linchpin, though.
What do you mean a linchpin?
You're a you know what a linchpin is, right? So like how it has the circle and it's the pin that holds it in, that keeps it all together and brings all the pieces.
That sounds like a grenade, actually.
Yeah, no, not grenade.
The
Yeah.
key cog, right?
The key cog, yeah, okay, but yeah, maybe, yeah. So I think so the role of what I do is, I think, important,
Yeah.
and you need more people like that in an organization, right? I think that's maybe the thing your organization can do more of, right? Is like, how do you create more of those people that, no matter what, like in my case, it's technology, right? But whatever the field is that you're in, is we need more people that can bridge multiple worlds of different cultures and perspectives, opinions, right? And so this is where I try and bring our worlds together. And I'm kind of the other way thinking, I'm like a matchmaker. Right?
Well,
I don't know.
Matchmaker between science and the human element of need and how you operate with it. I get it. That makes sense. Yeah. But Sherpa, like, what is Sherpa?
Well, you know what a Sherpa is, right?
No, what's a Sherpa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's actually real people who are Sherpas, and so I'm kind of maybe misappropriating the use of the name a bit, but there's real Sherpas. I mean, and it comes from when people go to Mount Everest and you want to summit Mount Everest, you may be a fantastic, very experienced mountain climber, and you've climbed many mountains, but you never climbed Mount Everest. You need somebody who's your guide and a coach, right, to help you get up that mountain, right? And because it's hard, even if you're the smartest person in the room, or whatever, we all need help, right? And so that's kind of part of my role, is to help us up the mountain. And if you ever read, I recommend a book to people called Deep Survival. It's a book that came out many years ago. And it's a fascinating book about why some people survive and why some people die. And most of it is around people, like most of it is people who should never have died. They're expert, like a Navy SEAL who drowns on an inner tube going down a river. A Navy SEAL, like he drowns, right? Or an experienced like mountain climber, summited Mount Everest, but then dies on a smaller mountain, right? And the interesting about, because we were talking about mountain climbing and Everest, is when you get to the top of the mountain, you celebrate, right? But mountain climbers are the only extreme people who actually celebrate when they're only halfway through the journey.
Wow.
Right? Because now getting down is the most dangerous part.
Yes.
And not to say going up is dangerous too, but the reason why the going down is so much more dangerous is kind of the premise of the book at some level. It's about what drives a person to the point where they're risking their life, and they have life situations right in front of them. If they make a wrong decision, they'll probably die. But the thing about mountain climbing is the goal is to get to the top, right? That's the goal. But actually, the real goal is to get down safely.
Have you mountain climbed, Ian?
I've not mountain climbed, but I've been up like to the stairways to the heaven, to the top.
Right? You mean the illegal one where you cross over?
This is when I was young. This is when I was young and fit and top shape, and when it wasn't illegal.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was when I was a little kid, and I read this book, right? When I read this Deep Survival book, it reminded me of that. Okay. And they talked about this thing. And the reason why it's really dangerous coming down is because mentally you've expended all of your mental energy and physical stamina to get to the top, because you think that's the goal. But the goal, that's actually only halfway. But now you're physically and mentally exhausted. You don't have anything in the tank. So coming down, it's really dangerous. And that's the experience when I thought about it, that's the experience I had when I did Stairway to Heaven. We're in top shape. I surfed. I was 17 years old. I was top shape. We walk up that thing, and I swear to you, it was super dangerous. Now, when you go up, it's a different experience, right? So we're going up like so imagine climbing a ladder. You ever climb a ladder, like climb onto the top of the house, but then you turn around and you try to go down the ladder.
Yeah.
That ladder looks like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
how do I do this? Like, right? Like, it's like terrifying. That ladder looks like nothing, right? So imagine Stairway 7, there are parts where you're climbing up, right? And you know, of course, if you slip and you fall, you're done.
Yeah.
But now imagine you're trying to come down those stairs and the thing goes off like that. Off to a thing. And you're like, where is the, what is over that edge, right? And you just see the stairs and there's no railing, there's nothing. They're just like stairs, like, you know, and you're just like, oh my God, this is like terrifying.
And you know why, right? You're terrified because you're working against gravity going up and coming down. Gravity's like, I got you, be careful. You. Yeah.
And your legs feel like jelly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're tired.
Yeah.
And again, you're just mentally, right? You're just like, oh my God. And now I swear to you, that's what it felt like. It's like you're coming off your roof of your house, but it's like 1,000 feet.
Wow.
Or several thousand feet. And you can't see where the ladder just kind of goes off into nothing. Right? And you're like, wait, how do I do this? Do I go on my butt? Like, how do you, I mean, it is like terrifying. And we're 18, we're like invincible, right?
Of course.
Yeah, when we're younger, we think we can do anything. And then you become an adult and all these fears set in and your mind is closed and the walls start getting smaller. And you're like, yeah, no, maybe, no, maybe.
Yeah.
But, you know, you do a lot of, you know, in your role there at Oceanit, you know, although you're navigating and connecting that whole understanding between the human side and the science of it, you do a lot of training, and you do training specifically in design thinking. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, about in 2009 or so, the founder of our company, Dr. Patrick Sullivan, his son, Matthew, went to the design school at Stanford, to the graduate school. So this is like the hardcore design thinking folks at Stanford, where it's kind of like the epicenter of many of what design thinking is or became. And my boss passed around an article about design thinking. And I remember reading it. It took me a while to finally get to it, like sat on my nightstand for like 3 months. I read it, but then once I read it, it was kind of like, it was one of those moments, right? I remember that moment. I was like, this is the secret. This is what I've been looking for all of my business career, is how do you do outside the box thinking? Everyone talks about it, but every time I would ask somebody who I think is an outside the box thinker, I go, how do you do that? And they go, I don't know. And it's like, so I always feel like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, how are we ever going to learn how to do this? But in that article, they talked about a process, right? And it was just so fast. I just went, oh my God, this is the secret. And for a moment I went, oh my God, I'm not telling anybody about this. You know, it's like a secret, right? It's like, oh my God, this is the secret. I have a huge competitive advantage now, right?
Yeah.
But then I thought, no. We have to share this. Like, we're gonna share this with everybody. We're gonna start with our tech industry, and then, but pretty quickly, as I started, once I get into something, I do deep dives. Like, I just like, for months, I'll just be like, what is this stuff, right? I'll just suck it all up. And then I came across, of course, the design school, Stanford, of course, this is where it started, but they had created what is called the K-12 lab. They were looking at how to bring design thinking to educators. And that was fascinating, because one of the hardest challenges we have in the United States, and continues to be, is how do you transform education, right? And it continues to be that. And I thought, just fascinated with that. I went, okay. So myself and another kind of, I would say, is the kind of co-founder of all of this, who's been my partner in crime, is Keith Matsumoto, and who's also at Oceanit. And we started designing out how we would bring design thinking to educators and to the business industry. And one of the things we figured out was, okay, how do we scale this? And so how we imagine scaling this was to hold annual boot camps to train educators about design thinking. But at the same time, we invited the business community. So there was 20 people. I hand selected 20 people from the industry to be trained in design thinking, to be coaches at these boot camps. And every year we would invite other industry people to come and be trained in design thinking to support educators. So that was one of the key things, is we wanted to bridge the world of education and industry. Now, what's interesting is some of those first people, who are the first 20 people, one of them is Scott Hugh, who's now the chair of Hawaiian Electric Industries, who was recently the CEO of Hawaiian Electric, the electric company. And Scott was a major champion of design thinking at Hawaiian Electric. And so, you know, I think of the other people too. There's where all these amazing people were for that first 20. And some of the first people who even, one of the first persons who really grabbed onto this is our current superintendent of schools, interim superintendent, Keith Hayashi.
Yep.
I spoke for the first time publicly about design thinking at a CTE event. And you know, what was interesting is I sat at this table, right? And I'm one of the panel people, but I'm sitting at the table and this guy shows up and he goes, oh, and I go, hey, hi, I'm Ian. He goes, oh, I'm Keith. Right. And we start talking, right. And we just kind of click, right. We're just like, oh yeah. He goes, oh yeah. I'm kind of crashing the party, you know, or something. I want to say something like that, like, oh, I wasn't on the list, or I kind of RSVP late. And so, but we sat next to each other, right? And we're talking and just kind of hitting it off. And then I get on this panel to talk about this new thing that we're going to be embarking on at Oceanit, like design thinking. This is what it is. We're going to do it. It's going to be part of our company and culture. We're going to bring it to industry. And also we want to bring it to educators to help our educators innovate from the inside out. We're not going to have people come from the outside telling us what to do. We're going to empower ourselves to innovate from within the system to go out, right? And when I finished my talk or whatever my share, I sat down and Keith Hayashi said, I want that. Like, I want that. Like, I want what you're talking about. When do we go? And so I remember that. And I want to say, as a result of that, right, I was like, okay, we organized the first Design Thinking Hawaii Bootcamp in the summer of, was it the summer? Or actually the August of 2011. So that earlier that year, I went to Stanford. I went to visit the design school. I went to see all of this stuff, right? Went to Google, went to IDEO and everything. But the first bootcamp started in August of 2011. And Keith Hayashi was the first one there. And he brought like, I don't know, 30 teachers. But you know what's interesting is Keith said to me before we said, Ian, because I had this in my mind, it's like, I only want educators and industry there. I don't want students. I want to invest the resource in the people who are going to be there long after the students are gone. But Keith was pretty adamant. He goes, no, Ian, think about inviting students. And I go, but Keith, if I invite a student, that means a teacher cannot come. Right? Yeah, or like it's a seat in the thing, because it's expensive, because we have to do this at a ballroom. There's lunch and breakfast. There's all these meals. Everything is really expensive. And he's like, no, but Ian, try think about having students there. I think it's going to be really important. And so I was like, okay, Keith, you bring students. Go bring the students and we'll see what happens, right? And actually it was transformative, because the students showed the adults in the room what was possible.
Yeah.
Right? They had no fear. But the reality is, what happens is we as adults transfer our fears onto them.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree.
And if you're not careful as trainers or whatever, your fears become your people's fears.
Yeah.
And so, when you're up there, whatever doing it, you got to be fearless. You got to think of the possibilities versus all the reasons why something can happen. And Keith did that, and that was transformative. So ever since then, we always have students. In fact, it's a requirement. You must bring students with you when you come to our boot camp, and you cannot come alone. This is a team sport. Innovation and doing new things requires a team, because it's too scary. It's like climbing a mountain by yourself.
Mhm.
Your chances of not surviving are pretty high if you go by yourself.
So Ian, I remember you doing all that. And what's interesting is I was actually at that CTE conference when you were part of the panel, because I was part of the state CTE office at that time.
Oh, you were? Was that
Yeah.
like, I forget what hotel we were at.
It was at the Hilton. It was a
It was the
Sheraton,
Hilton?
actually.
Sheraton?
Usually we go to the Sheraton. Yeah. And
Oh,
what's
wow.
interesting is, since COVID has happened though, like what has changed for training? Because those would be like groups you would bring in, the teachers would bring their students, and it would be a PD credit teachers could get, but then also the students get something out of it, right?
Right.
Now that COVID has hit, like what have you done to like change that transition in your training and your methods and delivery?
Well, one thing, is yeah, what's it's been interesting is, of course, you and I collaborate a lot.
Yep.
And I learn a lot from you as an educator and as an experienced facilitator. And I was, just recently we did a redesign of our executive design thinking session that normally is done it's normally in person, right? And it's just like anything, right? I've been doing that since August of 2015. I started this executive session for busy CEOs and executives who won't make the time to learn design thinking, even though their company, their people are learning design thinking. But the executives go, I'm too busy, I know this stuff, whatever. So I actually created that because again, the leadership, where the leadership goes is where everyone else goes.
Yes.
Right. But if everybody below them is like going gangbusters on, okay, we want to do different things differently, but the boss says, no, you're not, it all gets crushed, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, why are we going to do it? Yeah.
Why are we going to do that?
Or just another event that I attend.
Yeah. Or the boss says, you guys cannot do that.
Yeah.
You cannot do that.
Yeah.
Like, what you guys doing? You cannot do that, right? It's like afterward, you're like, well, okay, well, how's the business going to grow?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I designed that and had been doing it for years after years. So, you think about, we used to do like this almost monthly. Now we do it maybe quarterly, but for the first 5 years, I did this every month. So think about how many iterations of that workshop. It's by the time, it's like super optimized. It is a performance. Everything is tightly integrated. There's no like, why are you doing that? It's all like everything works together like a play, right? So it's tightly integrated, but that's for an in-person session, right? Now, when we did this online one, right, I said, okay, we're going to do an 8-hour online session. That's a challenge, right? I can't do what I did before, right? And so I had to back off on everything, cut things down, and talking with Cassie, right? He's like, okay, Cassie, what do you do to keep people engaged over long periods of time, right? So I thought about that and I said, okay, I'm going to chop these things up and I'm going to create spaces for engagement and dialogue, okay? And because I did that, now if I didn't actually take that and challenge myself to totally redesign something that had been super optimized, right? And go, okay, God, I'm gonna redo this whole thing. Not totally redo it, but like, because the problem is I think everything's important, right? I say, oh, I gotta cut this out, I gotta take this out, because it's like my play, right? Yeah. I'm the playwright. I made this play, and everything is like, it all works together. It's kind of like a comedian, right? You're doing your show, right? Every piece.
You can't change any part of the story.
Right. Otherwise it's not gonna work.
Every character in there is important. Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden it's like, I'm gonna kill that character. I'm gonna take that character out. It's like, oh, what is the story now, right? So anyway, so it's painful, but then it's a good opportunity, right, to like cut stuff, right? But then create space. And because I was challenged to do that, and we created space, right? When we had this group of people come to this workshop for 8 hours now online, the people could be a part of the play. It's like, see, before it was a session, but I was the primary musician. And there were pieces where people would play pieces during the course of a physical gathering. Yeah, you do want that interaction, but online it has to get amplified to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden, I think we had about 12 people. It was a small group.
Yeah, it was a small group.
But that 12 people became a 12-person jazz session.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it was really good. It was really good.
It took it to like a whole nother level.
Yeah. And there were conversations that happened that would have not transpired sometimes in a physical setting, because you have all that physical presence that sometimes you can't move past.
Or again, it's so optimized, there's no space for somebody to play a note, right? It's like perfect time to interject a riff or a note into the session, but because it's so tightly wound, other people cannot jump into it.
Yeah.
And that happens when you do physical things that are super optimized. At least, you know what I mean? But I think in the online thing, it actually creates opportunity if you can see that.
Yeah, because as you were talking, we could see the chat going and people putting stuff, we could see reactions on the screen. We could see this. So you could see the facial reactions of everyone. It wasn't just something like our eyes had to be focused on you. We now could see a screen with everybody on it.
Right. And so when Cassie would talk, everybody's focused on her, right?
Yeah.
And so it was and of course, Antipua added like a whole nother.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was a whole nother, yeah.
And she and I have been looking at how to collaborate more. She had been a kumu to me, since we met many years ago working on a project. And we'd always trying to figure out how to interweave our work, her work in building the beloved community and building in my work. So this was like an amazing, real time, jazz session, go for it, right?
Yeah.
And so she knew where to add the notes and the stories to what I was talking about, and it was like perfect.
So you, as the facilitator, you said you had to overcome knowing that you came from this machine oil thing that was like high performance. Then now you have to go back to the drawing board and be like, hey, this is an engine, these are tires, this is a steering wheel, right? Yeah. What are the things in your head you had to kind of go back and say, like, okay, let's focus. Like, what was that challenge that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard part is pruning stuff, right?
What do you mean by that?
Somebody just said a really good analogy. I forget who. I'm trying to think. God, so whoever watches this, who you, because I told you that story, Ian. When you take care of roses, you prune them. You prune the bush, because by pruning the bush, you actually then help the ones that stay alive to optimize, to grow bigger. But if you don't prune the bush, the nutrients gets allocated to all the flowers, but then none of them get to full potential. They get to the full potential by the pruning you do, right? And so I want to say similarly, the hard part is to go, okay, if I take this out, what do I lose? But really, what do I gain? Right? Or
did you ask yourself how might we statements as you're going through it? Because the design thinking process, right, is really
it's a constant like I'm playing in my head, okay, if I take this out, what is that by me?
Yeah.
Or if I keep this in, what is that by me? But most of it was pruning, okay, there's I think this is important, but is that, see, what's hard is the perspective. Is that really important? So a hard part is trying to be the beginner again, right? Because when you've done something so many times, the way I've done like this, it is a performance at some level, but at the same time, it's is that really that important?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah.
But
as a result of you, really having to start from the beginning again, and you revise this, the outcome of it, what your take of it, how did you feel after you saw how it happened? the outcomes that came out of it. Did you feel like how you normally would feel when you run a live session? Or do you feel like, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, and you're going to still tweak and go back and re-engineer it?
I think part of, maybe unconsciously I did this because I had to redo it, is I didn't have a lot of expectations on it, because I think that's when you feel bad. I feel bad, right? Like, oh, it should have been this or should have been that. I think when it's something, when you redo something, I feel like you got to give yourself more space, that it is going to be what it is. And it's kind of like you're like in learning mode again, versus, if I had done the same presentation, the optimized one in a setting, and it bombs, then I feel like really bad, because this is my optimized session, right? And it normally gets a lot of applause, but it didn't. Like, well, what's wrong, right? Whereas it's a huge experiment. It could totally flop. Right. It could totally flop. But I'm thinking, it probably can't flop, because there's other people involved here, right? If I'm engaging with people, that's probably already a leading indicator that this will be successful. So, so there's the leading indicators, and then there's kind of the lagging indicators we always talk about at Oceanit, right? So the leading thing is people are engaged, right? And they're staying engaged, and they're talking, and there's chat going on. The lagging indicators are at the end, people are like, yeah, we want to continue. Like, we didn't get to really finish, right? It's like, okay, that's an indicator. Hey.
Yeah. And what's interesting, you said it very well, is even, in our community, trainers, you have a set of expectations of what you want the learner to end up with. But if you go in knowing, okay, you know what, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do the best that I can, and with no expectation. And that from an educator's point of view, I normally say, if I can get one aha moment for one, that's rewarding, because then I knew I did it. I knew I got them there. I'm not saying that everybody will get there, because they're all at different paces, or at different places in the learning process. I don't know. What do you think, Jerome?
I think something that really kind of, sorry, got something in the background here. The beginner's mindset is very Zen, but like when you come back to that beginning, everything, the possibilities kind of arise from that area. So that kind of struck a chord with me. I like that you kind of let go of that precision. But when you let go again, you go into that space where anything can happen, but it's a great feeling.
You bring up a good, Jerome. I think that idea of letting go is both freeing and terrifying, right? Because you don't know, it's I think part of it is harder, right? As you get older and more experienced, if you're not careful, right, you can put a lot of expectations that come from other people, that everything you do is going to always be super high quality from the get-go. And I think part of it is letting go and trying to redo stuff, and it kind of not maybe be as perfect as people expect. Gives you the space, right, to explore and be creative and innovative, because innovation and all this stuff is just messy. And it always really starts, unfortunately, to be really crappy. So it's giving yourself the space to like be imperfect, because that's what the learning is, right? The learning is in that, and if everything has to be perfect, then it gets pretty boring pretty quick. I feel like that's when it's not fun anymore for me. When it's like, okay, it's so optimized, but
I think that goes back to your initial analogy when you said you read the book about how, when you do these hikes and you're mountain climbing, right? And when the person behind you says, don't worry, I got you, you can let go. You're like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, are you sure you got me? But in training, or even in your area, in our fields, the moment we let go, you're worried about like, okay, people are going to see it was boring, they were engaged, like, oh, I waste my time, being here in training. But what's going to happen is if you just let it go and allow them to be a part of the process, which is what you did in yours, it becomes of more value because they had an experience.
Mm. Yeah. I'm curious to ask you guys questions.
Yeah, turn it around. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what is the I don't know how to word this. What do you guys do to keep yourself growing and
I'll
learning?
let Jerome answer this one first because mine's going to be a long list.
And what is the value of that for yourself personally, and and as it relates to your work?
Two things. One, I partner with Cassie on things, and she stretches me so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
But two, we talked about this beginner's mindset, and when you have that and you kind of explore it, there's a lot of things you can learn from anybody. And if you allow yourself to go in that direction of, well, if I met this person, and you start to see and learn from this person, and maybe they start to open more doors for you, and you just keep on walking and walking and walking, it'll be amazing just to see where you end up. So you just release all of that ego and just keep on learning. And I think you can go really long way. Yeah. So this morning, Cassie and I, or not this morning, but before we were on this podcast, Cassie and I were talking about, or I was just telling her, I don't think I would ever said that I would be doing a podcast, but here we are, you know. But it's being open and letting go, and just trusting that whatever Cassie is like doing for ATD Hawaii's Texas, like it's good. It's going to be good. And I've kept that mindset, and here we are talking to you, Ian, the Sherpa master.
Yeah, here we are. In my case, Ian, is a little different, where I say, why not try? Because if I don't try, I actually am at a loss. And if I don't take the steps to learn, connect, grow, ask questions, learn from others. And to me, my real resource is other people and the ideas they have. Because then I can say, yeah, that's a great idea, or like, you know what? It failed before, but what if we try it now? It might work because it's different time, different place.
Yeah.
A lot of reading. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of poking around. I'm like you. My learning history journey, and still today, is jumping on the bus, asking for a transfer so I can jump on the next bus and be like, hey, check out that guy. He went on that bus. Okay, I'm gonna follow him, and I jump on that bus, and I'd be like, oh, where are you from? And you learn.
What bus is this? I need to jump on this bus.
Or they're going, young lady, can you please get off my bus?
And then waiting for the bus driver to tell me, oh, excuse me, you had way too many transfers already in one day.
This is the end of the line for you.
Yeah. I think that's what it really is, people. I'm going to say people are our greatest assets, and you learn something from every individual, even if they're resistant to some of the things that they're being taught. You learn something about that. You learn something about how they are and what actually drives them.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, good question.
Well, how do you know? How do you know you're pushing the edge for yourself in your learning? Is there any indicators for you, like when you go, I'm in high growth mode?
I think for me, I get frustrated because I want to accelerate, and I kind of hit this, geez, like what's next for me, or I feel like I need to go here, but it's getting really hard for me to take incremental steps. But if I take a step back from where I started, I can see all the progress that I have made. And then that kind of level sets me like, okay, you are on the right path. It's trying right now, but I think you're continuing to grow, and just keep that trust in there. Yeah.
I see it as two things. One is, like how, I don't know if have you ever done a marathon, Ian?
No.
Neither have
No.
I, but I read about it and I hear about it. I think the most I've ever done was a half marathon. And I would tell you, it is really your mind and your body having that internal conversation and saying, that's it, I quit. And your brain's like, oh my gosh, we're so tired, but there's an end, there's a goal. And your body's like, that's it, I give up. It's sore here, it's sore there. And your mind's saying, but we're almost there. And so the internal conversations that you have with yourself really are the things that are going to help you persevere. And it's changing your mindset to realize everyone goes through this in their career where you have a lull during the year and you're like, oh, I gotta go to my job. I'm, and you have this like, how do you call it, brain desert, where the thoughts and the creative parts are nowhere to be found, but you just see all the sand. And so you have to keep walking forward and walking forward until you find that island or you find that new trinket that's in the sand that's going to motivate you to help you to get to the next one. And for me, I think when I hit those parts of when you are stuck, I pivot and I say, okay, let me step away from this, go look at something else, and something else contributes to that, because they always say, right, it's hindsight 2020. And I never understood what that means until you have to be blind without 2020 vision going through the process. So when you get to the end, you're like, wow, it's so clear now, I can see it.
Yeah. You kind of reminded me of as you're talking about marathons and stuff. It reminded me of it was actually I actually recommend it if any of you have a chance to yes, primarily as a spectator, but if you actually do qualify, but is to actually go and watch the Ironman triathlon on the Big Island in Kona. It is the World Championship. So these are the top triathletes from around the world that qualify and compete in Kona for the championships. And I was fortunate to go as part of the security team. And so I had access to pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So literally, on top of Kamehameha Hotel, I'm like on the top of the building and I'm watching all of this from the roof. And it's super, it starts super early in the morning, right? All of us are there. Like I was there like probably 4 o'clock in the morning. The thing starts at 7. And you have 24 hours to complete the triathlon, 24 hours. So we're there like literally 24 hours. And at the end of it, I'm not tired. And I thought to myself, why am I not tired? And it was because through the course of the day, it's like the most amazing spectator sport you've ever imagined. And it's because of what's going on inside of you. Mm-hmm. I remember watching people come out of the water. So the first thing is the swim, open water swim. And and I remember watching people come out of the swim. So they're swimming, there's like a bike, things like 100 something miles, and then a full marathon, right? So think of like, right, how torturous that is. Most of us couldn't swim the 2.5 mile thing, let alone get on a bike and ride in a cramped position for like, I don't know, 100 something miles, and then get off of that thing and then run a full marathon, right? The
it's
amount
like the entire
of
Big Island.
Yeah, just think of the what that mentally is too, right? But then I think what's interesting is the reason I'm telling these stories too is part of our own prejudice or preconceived ideas of what is possible and what is possible for ourselves. So I watch people who look like Iron Men and women, like they look like they're like maybe 30 something years old. They're buff, they're tough, they look like Iron Men and Iron Women, and they quit even after like on the bike, like they don't finish, they just quit, they stop, right? But then I was at the finish line, so nobody goes home, everybody stays to cheer everybody through to the finish line. And I'm in the special area because we're in the security team, right? And I got this amazing view, you know. I'm in the backside of this thing, and as you run down for 2 miles, there's people cheering you, just cheering you on for like 2 miles, right? As you run down, and then when you cross over that line, right? They will say your name. They'll yell your name, blah blah blah, Joe Smith. You are an Ironman, right? And the crowd just go nuts, right? Just goes nuts, right? And you're going nuts too because you just go, oh my god. Now, I remember watching people run down the cross line. They're missing an arm. Thinking, how the shit did they swim? Or missing a leg. I'm thinking, wait, how did they bike and swim and do that? And they just run, you know? And then I remember this guy runs across the line, right? It's like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night. So think about it. How many hours this guy's been going, right? This guy crosses the finish line. They go, Joe Smith, whatever, you are an Ironman. He is a grandfather. He is 70 something years old. This is only he's only started doing this 10 years ago. And his whole family is there. And you're going, oh my God, I'm a slug. Right? This old dude and so many people older finish. And I thought, what is that? And all these young guys don't finish. Right? I was like, wow, this is fascinating, right? And then just the prejudice too, right? Of like, my prejudice, I see this big guy, I swear, he must be 250, 275. This big guy, he comes out of the swim. He gets on a bike. He's bigger than the bike. And this guy starts and I go, no way is this guy gonna finish even the bike. So, you know, I'm walking around, whatever, and I back up on the roof. I don't know, several hours later, I look and the guy's coming back off the bike. Now he literally falls off the bike. Think how painful that is to hold a position like that for hours on a bike, and you're 250, 275, right? I was like, oh my God, this guy finished. And then I see him go into the change thing, come back out, and now he's a big dude. He does not look like an Ironman. And I go, no freaking way is this guy gonna finish the marathon. And then watch him boom. And you know, as you start the marathon, you have to climb up this hill. I just watch him boom, boom, boom. It's like a giant, right? Boom, boom. And I just go, no freaking way. I'm in the security center, hours later. I look up and I go, there's the guy. Holy shit, he's crossing the line. Like, I was like, oh my God, right? And then the last one, because I know we're running out of time, is I see this lady. She finishes the bike and she's starting to run, and it's kind of late. I see this lady and I'm watching her and I'm going, what is wrong with this lady? And I realize she has an artificial leg. And she's just going. I was like, oh my God, right? And she's going. And you know, you need to cross the line before midnight. I swear, she was one of the last. And I tell you, everybody was screaming for her to go faster. And I'm in the security center too. We're all screaming, faster, because you can tell like if they're gonna make it. And she was behind. Unfortunately, she does cross, but it's after, like, it's 10 minutes after the thing. But I tell you, she's an Iron woman.
But she finished.
Yeah.
She finished. Yeah.
You think about, and that's why I thought later on, I go, why am I not tired? Because through the entire course of the day, you're constantly inspired, because you just go, my God, look at what people are capable, like how brutally tough that is. And they just keep going. And everybody you think that's not an Ironman or capable, they are.
But it's also the inspiration and empathy that stirs within you, right? As an individual.
It's so inspiring.
That's so cool. We're going to move into tech zapper mode. and you're gonna answer a bunch of questions rapidly as we go through this. Are you ready?
Ready.
We're gonna start the clock. 3, 2, 1.
Your most favorite piece of tech of all time.
My phone. iPhone.
Okay. All right. Let's go with that. What are the top 3 apps?
Top 3 apps. Top 3 apps. Nike app.
Nice.
My Aura Ring app for sleep,
Nice.
and texting.
All right. Your top 3 favorite creators. Could be tech, art, music, whatever.
Top 3 creators.
Yeah.
Top 3 creators. That's an interesting question. I don't know. I think of like Guy Kawasaki. I'm just thinking about. I don't know if he's a creator, but I guess he is a creator. Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote Blink and Outliers. And somebody like David Kelly from IDEO and the Stanford Design School.
If you were stuck on an island, what piece of technology would you want to be stuck with?
Rice cooker. I don't know. I'm stuck on
You have rice on that island.
Yeah, I know. The problem is there's no rice, right? What would I? That's what I never thought. Something to make water. I don't know, like a desalinator. So I can make water.
The magic.
Not the life straw. The life straw.
Yeah, or something I can convert salt water to fresh water. Can't live without water.
Nice. All right, last question. If you wanted to hear someone else talk on our podcast and you'd have to help us out with this, who would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh boy. Antiponani Burgess.
All right.
That's a great one.
She would be amazing.
She would be amazing. Yeah. Well, Ian, thanks for joining us today for our first ever Tech Pod or Tech SIG podcast for ATD Hawaii. We really appreciate your time. And everyone join in next time as we have our next guest. We have no idea who that's going to be, but maybe we do now.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.